The Taming of the Shrew. Catherine, the Shrew, was the eldest daughter of Baptista, a rich gentleman of Padua. She was a lady of such an ungovernable spirit and fiery temper, such a long-tongued scold, that she was known in Padua by no other name than Catherine the Shrew. It seemed very unlikely, indeed impossible, that any gentleman would ever be found who would venture to marry this lady. Therefore, Baptista was much blamed for holding back his consent to many excellent offers that were made to her gentle sister Bianca, putting off all Bianca's suitors with this excuse, that when the eldest sister was fairly off his hands, they should have free leave to begin courting young Bianca. It happened, however, that a gentleman named Petruchio came to Padua purposely to look for a wife, not at all discouraged by these reports of Catherine's temper, and hearing she was rich and handsome, he resolved to marry this famous scold and to tame her into a meek and manageable wife. And truly, none was so fit to set about this Herculean labor as Petruchio, whose spirit was as strong as Catherine's. He was a witty and most happy-tempered humorist. Moreover, he was so wise and had such true judgment that he well knew how to pretend furious anger when his spirits were so calm that he could have laughed merrily at his own angry pretense, for his natural temper was careless and easy. The boisterous airs he put on when he became the husband of Catherine were but in sport. More properly speaking, they were the result of his shrewd judgment that the only way to overcome the passionate ways of the furious Catherine was to treat her in the same fashion. A courting, then, Petruchio went to Catherine the Shrew. First of all, he applied to Baptista, her father, for leave to woo his gentle daughter Catherine, as Petruchio called her. He said archly that, having heard of her bashful modesty and mild behavior, he had come from Verona to seek her love. Her father, though he wished her married, was forced to confess that Catherine would ill answer this description, it being soon apparent of what manner of gentleness she was composed. At that very moment, her music master rushed into the room to complain that the gentle Catherine, his pupil, had broken his head with her lute for presuming to find fault with her performance. When Petruchio heard this, he said, "She is a brave wench. I love her more than ever, and long to have a chat with her." Hurrying the old gentleman for a positive answer, he said, "My business must be done in haste. Signor Baptista, I cannot come every day or two to woo." "My business must be done in haste, Signor Baptista. I cannot come every day to woo. You knew my father. He is dead and has left me heir to all his lands and goods. Then tell me, if I get your daughter's love, what dowry will you give with her?" Baptista thought his manner was somewhat blunt for a lover, but being glad to get Catherine married, he answered that he would give her 20,000 crowns for her dowry and half his estate at his death. So this odd match was quickly agreed on, and Baptista went to inform his shrewd daughter of her lover's declarations, and sent her in to Petruchio's to listen to his suit. In the meantime, Petruchio was settling with himself the method of courtship he should pursue. He decided, I will woo her with some spirit when she comes. If she rails at me, why then I will tell her she sings as sweetly as a nightingale. If she frowns, I will say she looks as clear as roses newly washed with dew. If she will not speak a word, I will praise the eloquence of her language. And if she bids me leave her, I will thank her as if she had bid me stay with her a week. Now the stately Catherine entered. Petruchio first addressed her with, Good morrow, Kate, for that is your name, I hear. Catherine, not liking this plain salutation, said disdainfully, They call me Catherine. Who do you speak to me? You lie, replied the lover, for you are called plain Kate and bonny Kate, and sometimes Kate the Shrew. But Kate, you are the prettiest Kate in Christendom, and therefore, Kate, hearing your mildness praised in every town, I have come to woo you for my wife. A strange courtship they made of it. She, in loud and angry terms, showed him how justly she had gained the name of Shrew, while he still praised her sweet and courteous words. At length, hearing her father coming, he said, intending to woo her as quickly as possible, Sweet Catherine, let us drop this idle talk, for your father has consented that you shall be my wife. Your dowry is agreed upon, and whether you will or no, I will marry you. And now, Battista, entering, Petruchio told him his daughter had received him kindly, and that she had promised to be married the next Sunday. This Catherine denied, saying she would rather see him hanged on Sunday, and reproached her father for wishing to wed her to such a madcap ruffian as Petruchio. Petruchio asked her father not to pay heed to her angry words, for he said they had agreed she should seem reluctant before her father, but that when they were alone, he had found her very fond and loving. He said to her, Give me your hand, Kate. I will go to Venice to buy you fine apparel for our wedding day. Provide the feast, father, and bid the wedding guests. I will be sure to bring rings, fine array, and rich clothes, that my Catherine may be fine. Kiss me, Kate, for we will be married on Sunday. On the Sunday, all the wedding guests were assembled, but they waited long before Petruchio came. Catherine wept for vexation to think that Petruchio had only been making fun of her. At last, however, he appeared, but he brought none of the bridal finery he had promised Catherine, nor was he dressed himself like a bridegroom, but in strange, disordered attire, as if he meant to make a sport of the serious business he came about. His servant and the very horses on which they rode were also apparelled in mean and fantastic fashion. Petruchio could not be persuaded to change his dress. He said Catherine was to be married to him and not to his clothes. Finding it was in vain to argue with him, to the church they went. He still behaving in the same mad way, for when the priest asked Petruchio if Catherine should be his wife, he swore so loud that he should that, all amazed, the priest let fall his book. As he stopped to take it up, this mad-brained bridegroom gave him such a cuff that down fell the priest and his book again. And all the while they were being married. He stamped and swore so that the high-spirited Catherine trembled and shook with fear. After the ceremony was over, while they were yet in the church, He called for wine, drank a loud health to the company, and threw a soaked cake, which was at the bottom of the glass, full in the sexton's face. He gave no other reason for this strange act than that the sexton's beard grew thin and scrawny, and seemed to call for the sop as he was drinking. Surely there never was such a mad marriage, but Petruchio only pretended to be wild, the better to succeed in the plot he had formed to tame his shrewish wife. Baptista had provided a lavish marriage feast, but when they returned from church, Petruchio, taking hold of Catherine, declared his intention of carrying his wife home instantly. No protest of his father-in-law or angry words of the enraged Catherine could make him change his purpose. He claimed a husband's right to dispose of his wife as he pleased, and away he hurried Catherine, seeming so daring and resolute that no one dared attempt to stop him. Petruchio mounted his wife upon a miserable horse, lean and lank, which he had picked out for the purpose, with himself and his servant no better mounted. They journeyed on through rough and muddy ways. Whenever this horse of Catherine's stumbled, he would storm and swear at the poor jaded beast, who could scarce crawl under his burden, as if he had been the most fierce-tempered man alive. At length, after a weary journey during which Catherine had heard nothing but the wild ravings of Petruchio at the servant and the horses, they arrived at his house. Petruchio welcomed her kindly to her home, but he resolved she should have neither rest nor food that night. The tables were spread, and supper soon served, but Petruchio, pretending to find fault with every dish, threw the meat about the floor and ordered the servants to remove it. All this he did, as he said, in love for his Catherine, that she might not eat meat that was not well prepared. And when Catherine, weary and supperless, retired to rest, he found the same fault with the bed, throwing the pillows and bedclothes about the room, so that she was forced to sit down in a chair where, if she chanced to drop asleep, she was presently awakened by the loud voice of her husband, storming at the servants for the ill-making of his wife's bridal bed. The next day, Petruchio pursued the same course, still speaking kind words to Catherine. But when she attempted to eat, he found fault with everything that was set before her, throwing the breakfast on the floor as he had done the supper. Catherine, the haughty Catherine, was then forced to beg the servants to bring her secretly a morsel of food. But they, being instructed by Petruchio, replied they dared not give her anything unknown to their master. "Ah," said she, "did he marry me to famish me? Beggars that come to my father's door have food given to them, but I, who never knew what it was to beg for anything, am starved for want of food, giddy for want of sleep, kept awake with oaths and fed with brawling. What vexes me most of all is that he does it under the name of perfect love, pretending that if I sleep or eat, it will soon mean my death." Here the soliloquy was interrupted by the entrance of Petruchio. Not meaning she should be quite starved, he had brought her a small portion of meat, and he said to her, "How fares my sweet Kate? Here, love, you see how painstaking I am. I have prepared your meat myself. I am sure this kindness merits thanks. What, not a word? Nay, then you love not thy meat, and all the pains I have taken are to no purpose. He then ordered the servant to take the dish away. Extreme hunger, which had weakened the pride of Catherine, made her say, though angered to the heart, I pray you let it stand. But this was not all Petruchio intended to bring her to, and he replied, the poorest service is repaid with thanks, and so shall mine be before you touch the meat. At this, Catherine uttered a reluctant, I thank you, sir. And now he allowed her to eat a slender meal, saying, much good may it do your gentle heart, Kate. Eat hearty. And now, my honey love, we will return to your father's house and revel as bravely as the best, with silken coats and caps and golden rings, with ruffs and scarfs and fans and double change of finery. To make her believe he really intended to give her these gay things, he called in a tailor and a haberdasher, who brought some new clothes he had ordered for her. Then, giving her a plate to the servant to take away, before she had half satisfied her hunger, he said, what have you dined? The haberdasher presented a cap, saying, here is the cap your worship ordered. At this, Petruchio began to storm afresh, saying the cap was molded in a porridge bowl, that it was no bigger than a cockle or walnut shell, and desiring the haberdasher to take it away and make it bigger. Catherine said, I will have this. All gentlewomen wear such caps as these. When you are gentle, replied Petruchio, you shall have one too, and not till then. The meat Catherine had eaten had a little revived her fallen spirits, and she said, why, sir, I trust I may have leave to speak, and speak I will. I am no child, no babe. Your betters have had the patience to hear me speak my mind, and if you cannot, you had better stop your ears. Petruchio would not hear these angry words, for he had happily discovered a better way of managing his wife than keeping up a jangling argument with her. Therefore his answer was, why, you speak true. It is a paltry cap, and I love you for not liking it. Love me or love me not, said Catherine. I like the cap, and I will have this cap or none. You say you wish to see the gown, said Petruchio, still pretending to misunderstand her. The tailor then came forward and showed her a fine gown he had made for her. Petruchio, whose intention was that she should have neither cap nor gown, found as much fault with that. Oh, mercy heaven, said he, what stuff is here? What do you call this, a sleeve? It is like a demi-cannon, carved up and down like an apple tart, the tailor said. You bid me make it, according to the fashion of the times. And Catherine said she had never seen a better fashioned gown. This was enough for Petruchio, and privately desiring these people might be paid for their goods and excuses made to them for the seemingly strange treatment he bestowed upon them, he, with fierce words and furious gestures, drove the tailor and the haberdasher out of the room. Then, turning to Catherine, he said, well, come, my Kate, we will go to your father's, even in these mean garments we now wear. Then he ordered his horses, saying they should reach Baptista's house by dinner time, for that it was but 7 o'clock. Now it was not early morning, but the very middle of the day, when he spoke this. Therefore Catherine ventured to say, though modestly, being almost overcome by the vehemence of his manner, I dare assure you, sir, it is 2 o'clock, and will be supper time before we get there. but Petruchio meant that she should be so completely subdued that she should agree to everything he said before he brought her to her father. Therefore, as if he were lord even of the sun and could command the hours, he said it should be what time he pleased to have it before he set forth. For, he said, whatever I say or do, you still are contradicting it. I will not go today, and when I go, it shall be what o'clock I say it is. Catherine was forced to practice her newly learned obedience for another day. And not till he had brought her proud spirit down so low that she dared not remember that there was such a word as contradiction would Petruchio allow her to go to her father's house. Even while they were upon their journey there, she was in danger of being turned back again only because she happened to hint it was the sun when he affirmed the moon shone brightly at noonday. Now, by my mother's son, said he, and that is myself, it shall be the moon, or stars, or what I wish before I journey to your father's house. He then pretended that he was going back, but Catherine, no longer Catherine the Shrew, but the obedient wife, said, let us go forward. I pray now that we have come so far, and it shall be the sun or moon or what you please. And if you please to call it a rush candle, henceforth I vow it shall be so for me. Thus he was resolved to prove. Therefore he said again, I say it is the moon. I know it is the moon, replied Catherine. You lie. It is the blessed sun, said Petruchio. Then it is the blessed sun, replied Catherine. But sun it is not when you say it is not. What you will have it named, even so it is, and so it ever shall be for Catherine. He then allowed her to proceed on her journey. But to see where this obedient mood would last, he addressed an old gentleman they met on the road as if he had been a young woman, saying to him, Good morrow, gentle mistress, and asked Catherine if she had ever beheld a fairer gentlewoman, praising the red and white of the old man's cheeks and comparing his eyes to two bright stars. Again he addressed him, saying, Fair lovely maid, once more good day to you, and said to his wife, Sweet Kate, embrace her for her beauty's sake. The now completely vanquished Catherine quickly adopted her husband's opinion and spoke in the same way to the old gentleman, saying to him, Young budding virgin, you are fair and fresh and sweet. Whither are you going, and where is your dwelling? Happy are the parents of so fair a child. Why, how now, Kate, said Petruchio. I hope you are not mad. This is a man, old and wrinkled, faded and withered, and not a maiden, as you say he is. At this, Catherine said, Pardon me, old gentleman, the sun has so dazzled my eyes that everything I look on seemeth green. Now, I perceive you are a reverend father. I hope you will pardon me for my sad mistake. Do good, old grandsire, said Petruchio, and tell us which way you are traveling. We shall be glad of your good company, if you are going our way. The old gentleman replied, Fair sir, and you, my merry mistress, this strange encounter with you has much amazed me. My name is Vincentio, and I am going to visit a son of mine who lives at Padua. Then Petruchio knew the old gentleman to be the father of Lucentio, a young gentleman who was to be married to Baptista's younger daughter, Bianca, and he made Vicencio very happy by telling him about the rich marriage his son was about to make. Then they all journeyed on pleasantly together till they came to Baptista's house, where there was a large company assembled to celebrate the wedding of Bianca and Lucencio. Baptista, having willingly consented to the marriage of Bianca, when he had got Catherine off his hands, when they entered, Baptista welcomed to the wedding feast, at which there was also present another newly married pair. Lucencio, Bianca's husband, and Hortensio, the other newly married man, could not refrain from sly jest, which seemed to hint at the shrewish disposition of Petruchio's wife. These fine bridegrooms seemed highly pleased with the mild tempers of the ladies they had chosen, laughing at Petruchio for his less fortunate choice. Petruchio took little notice of their jokes till the ladies were retired after dinner. And then he perceived Baptista himself joined in the laugh against him. For when Petruchio affirmed that his wife would prove more obedient than theirs, the father of Catherine said, "Now, in good sadness, son Petruchio, I fear you have got the worst shrew of all." "Well," said Petruchio, "I say no, and therefore, for assurance that I speak the truth, let us each one send for his wife, and he whose wife is most obedient to come as soon as she is sent for shall win a wager which we will propose." To this the other two husbands willingly consented, for they were quite confident that their gentle wives would prove more obedient than the headstrong Catherine. They therefore proposed a wager of 20 crowns, but Petruchio merrily said he would lay as much as that upon his hawk or hound, but that he would bet 20 times as much upon his wife. Lucencio and Hortensio raised the wager to 100 crowns, and Lucencio first sent his servant to ask Bianca to come to him. But the servant returned and said, "Sir, my mistress sends you word she is busy and cannot come." "How?" said Petruchio. "Does she say she is busy and cannot come? Is that an answer for a wife?" Then they laughed at him and said, it would be well if Catherine did not send him a worse answer. And now it was Hortensio's turn to send for his wife, and he said to his servant, "Go and entreat my wife to come to me." Oh, entreat her," said Petruchio. "Nay, then, she needs must come." "I am afraid, sir," said Hortensio, "your wife will not be entreated." But presently this gracious husband looked a little blank when the servant returned without his mistress. And he said to him, "How now? Where is my wife?" "Sir," said the servant, "my mistress says you are playing some joke, and therefore she will not come. She bids you come to her." "Worse and worse," said Petruchio. And then he sent his servant, saying, "Sirrah, go to your mistress and tell her I command her to come to me." The company had scarcely time to think she would not obey this summons when Baptista, in complete amazement, exclaimed, "Now, by my holy dame, here comes Catherine." And she entered, saying meekly to Petruchio, "What is your will, sir, that you send for me?" "Where is your sister and Hortensio's wife?" said he. Catherine replied, "They sent conferring by the parlor fire." "Go fetch them hither," said Petruchio. Away went Catherine without a word to perform her husband's command. "Here is a wonder," said Lucencio. "If you talk of a wonder, and so it is," said Hortensio, "I wonder what it bodes. Marry, Peace it bodes, said Petruchio, and love, and quiet life, and right supremacy, and, to be short, everything that is sweet and happy. Catherine's father, overjoyed to see this reformation in his daughter, said, Now, may fortune favor you, son Petruchio. You have won the wager, and I will add another 20,000 crowns to her dowry, as if she were another daughter, for she is changed as if she had never been. Nay, said Petruchio, I will win the wager better yet, and show more signs of her new-built virtue and obedience. Catherine, now entering with the two ladies, he continued, See where she comes, and brings you uncooperative wives as prisoners to her powers of womanly persuasion. Catherine, that cap of yours does not become you. Off with that bauble, and throw it under foot. Catherine instantly took off her cap and threw it down. Lord, said Hortensio's wife, may I never have cause to sigh till I am brought to such a silly pass. And Bianca also said, Fie, what foolish duty call you this? At this Bianca's husband said to her, I wish your duty were as foolish too. The wisdom of your duty, fair Bianca, has cost me 100 crowns since dinner time. The more fool you, said Bianca, for betting on my duty. Catherine, said Petruchio, I charge you, tell these headstrong women what duty they owe their lords and husbands. And to the wonder of all present, the reformed, shrewish lady spoke as eloquently in praise of the wife-like duty of obedience as she had practiced it to the letter in ready submission to Petruchio's will. And Catherine once more, famous in Padua, not as heretofore as Catherine the Shrew, but as Catherine the most obedient and dutiful wife in Padua.